benvenuti a questo incontro di Lucca Changes, Creators of Worlds, the Universities that Inspire Artists. Sono contentissima di essere qui con Iain, Caig e Armand Baltazar. Thank you guys for sharing your time with us, for being here with us in Lucca, even if not in person. We would have loved to have you.
Well, thank you for having us here. I mean, obviously it would be great to be there in person, but my goodness, it's so fantastic to be able to connect with everyone in Italy.
It's good that we find a way through any wall, don't we? We're like weeds. You can't hold us back.
Yes, and it's I love the connection between Italy, California, and you are near Vancouver? Yeah, am I mistaken?
I'm across the water on an island, Vancouver Island, and on the tip of that is a city called Victoria, which is actually the capital of all British Columbia, even though it's this small capital city with a rainforest on the rest of the island. It's magical here. I'm not prejudiced.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, it makes it sound like a fantasy landscape. That's great.
Pretty much, yeah. That's where I wanted to live. So,
look, we're gonna chat in the next hour about your work and overall. By the way, apologies in advance for my English, but overall, what inspires you? Because the title of this event is about what does it mean to be creators of imaginary worlds. And which universes and maybe authors and characters and people and whichever comes across your way inspire you when it comes to being a creative person, you know, someone who's in your case a storyteller in different medias and through different tools, but you both are storytellers. So as I don't want to take too much of your time, I'd like to ask, I know both of you have prepared a very short selection of your work, and whichever of you wants to come first, I'd love to see what you prepared.
Come on, take it from here.
Okay. Well, you know, it's been a wonderful thing being able to just fall in love with great stories and great visuals and people who've gone before us and make universes and worlds and characters. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of what I've done and things that I like to do in that spirit. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to share.
Uh-huh.
All right. Is it sharing? Yes. Okay. Okay, here we go. So this is our talk. And I began, like a lot of other folks, loving books and loving the worlds that they created. And I wanted to do the same when I was in school. I read books like Dune and Treasure Island. And even when I was younger, like Where the Wild Things Were. And I wanted to make worlds. I wanted to make characters that existed in those worlds. I remember being a young boy and seeing Star Wars, and I thought, I want to do that. So I was lucky enough as I got older to work at a bunch of animation studios that did just that. They made worlds. I got to visit places like Egypt in The Prince of Egypt. I got to help find New Orleans again during the birth of jazz in Princess and the Frog. I even got to make some trolls and monsters from time to time, which was fantastic. It was like being a little kid doing these things. And of course, in my career, I got fortunate enough to be able to make some images that were a celebration of Italy. And this is from Cars 2, this mythical town we made up called Portofino, which was inspired by the beauty of Italy. And with my imagination and through art, I got to go there. I got to meet some dinosaurs in The Good Dinosaur, and even spend some time inside a little girl's imagination in her head in Pixar's Inside Out. And that was a really, really, really fortunate thing. And then I wanted to make stories and worlds maybe for myself. I wanted to make stories about pirates and demons and what it'd be like to encounter them. Then I thought it'd be really, really wonderful to sort of take old mythological stories like Jason and the Argonauts, but become a little boy and experience it through the lens of a science fiction adventure. Create worlds in that way that were new again, because I just took two things and smashed them together. As a matter of fact, some of the characters I created when I was younger would inspire other ones that would come later on, like this fellow. I got to make vehicles, I got to make more monsters, and I even got inspired to make a few original stories. A little story, in fact, since I'm here with my good friend Iain Caig, was a celebration of a character in Star Wars, and I got to make up a little story about Darth Vader and present it to George Lucas along with this painting. I got to write little horror stories and make pictures for that and create the world and characters of that. And I'm even actually now working on some side projects. One that is a story about this Viking girl who learns to find her own voice and learns to become a better person. And another story that celebrates the Filipino culture through the eyes of a little Filipino boy. And these are all things that actually inspired me to make stories. Like this guy, he inspires me to make stories. And by painting a painting for him and creating a story for him, I was able to create a whole new world and universe that I got to celebrate in English and I got to celebrate in Italian, which was fantastic, where time could smash all together, where a boy could fly around on a board, where he could be with his friends, where he could have a dad who is a world-class famous inventor, or even see giant robots walking down his street. This was a world where dinosaurs could come alive, where you could have your own submarine car, because I always wanted a submarine car when I was a kid. And I wanted to see a world that was like mine, but cooler. And getting to make up stories and getting to use art to help create worlds, I could see old villains from the past, go to undersea cities, and continue the adventure. And that is some of the really fun things about being able to sort of delve in the imagination.
Bravo!
That's great, honestly. I'm sorry we don't have an audience because that calls for clapping. Thank you.
I'll supply the cheers.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
And well, I'd like, okay, I have many questions, but Iain, why don't you go and then we tackle both of you at the same time, if that's fine for you.
Great. But I want to say something back even before Armand's presentation. You're introducing us as creators of worlds and characters and make-believe and an elite class of creators who can conjure this out of these tentacles at the end of our wrists. And the truth is, so are you. So is our translator. Her name is not Break a Leg, Alice. And the very silent Joel, who's actually holding this all together and will never appear. But it's important to remember that everybody, every night, goes to sleep, creates amazing worlds that didn't exist before. You populate it with characters that are super well drawn and designed and beautifully animated with great dialogue and lighting and everything. So we are all world creators. The trick that we've learned is how to do that when you're awake. And really, it is a trick. It is a trick. It's a trick called language. You can do it with words, and we have all these fun languages to choose from. You can do it with pictures. You can do it with dance. You can do it with cinema. You can do it with a whole range of wonderful languages we have to tell stories. So my goal over and above creating stories is to try and teach people some of those languages, the ones that I know. And we do that by example. I think in the world today, we talk a lot about how to make a better future. Well, the best way is to live it, embody it, be the sort of person you want other people to be. And I want everyone to draw and paint and tell stories because that's how we share. So I'm dedicating my life to telling stories and helping other people to tell stories too, because that is an essential service as far as I'm concerned. Maybe not as life-saving as the other essential services out there keeping us alive to tell stories, but still very important if you want to have a future that's worth living for. So
Yeah, absolutely. Here.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I think with the languages at your disposal, the difference is that you both share the worlds you create with others and feed others' imagination. So yeah, it's I get back to you teaching because it's one of the things I want to ask you about. But thank you for that. That's a great introduction.
We'll talk about that afterwards then. That's, all right, let me show you what I'm up to, or what I've been up to. I'm going to share my screen. You're now going to see what a technological whiz I am. Woo! There it is. And let's enter full screen. No, don't send that. Shh. I love all these secret messages you get from invisible people. Okay, full screen mode. Ta-da! There you are.
Technology.
Thank you. And now the rabbit. Okay, so this is the story of a book called Shadowline. It was to be an art book. And actually before that, it was to be a different kind of book. Let me show you what it was. This is what it turned out to be. This is the front and back cover. And this is what I look like in real life in here. Somehow I wasn't able to grow one of these. I was able to lose this, but yeah, it's not fair. When I was young, I thought I would look like this. And I knew I would have a family. This isn't my family, but I love groups and units. You know, drawing people, creating people on paper is really fun. Making them for real is better. And so, you know, my son and my daughter are my best creations, and my 38-year-old marriage is another wonderful creation that it's hard work every day. It's the best thing I ever did. So this is where technology freezes up. I tear up.
And we'll jump in and cover back. Don't worry.
Jump out again. Okay. So I started my career as an illustrator, actually an animator. I did Sesame Street cartoons. I think it was the letters A, E, and W. And then I did illustration for a long time. I did the Choose Your Own Adventure books, a lot of black and white pen and ink. This was the front cover of a kind of Choose Your Own Adventure book. All of these in London, where I lived at the time. Then I moved to California and I needed a job, so I got work on this show. And I did not work on this series. I worked on the series that came after and the series that came after that. So the prequels and the sequels. But I was allowed to do some posters, book covers and things. And here we are with all the characters that I didn't grow up with. I was in art school when this came out. So unlike young Armand down there, I was an old cynical art student, and what is Star Wars nonsense? And then I snuck off to the theater and sat down in the front row, hoping none of my friends would find me. Of course, they're all in the front row too. So we watched this movie, we loved it. And so when I got an invitation from a publisher to create the Star Wars art of Iain McCaig, knowing that when you're designing for a film, only this much, the tip of an iceberg, ever makes it out into the light of day, let alone onto the screen. Most of what we do is hidden away underneath. It might come out years later, or it might go into that dust-controlled, temperature-controlled vault at Skywalker Ranch, or into the garbage. Who knows? At any rate, I wanted to show those hidden drawings as well as the ones that made it. And we had a contract with my publisher. We're ready to go when we heard from Lucasfilm that George was going to do his own concept art book. And could I please wait 10 years? Well, I'd be old in 10 years. I'd be 10 years younger than I am now. But anyway, I quickly said to the publisher, wait, why don't we just make it an Art of Iain McCaig art book? And I have all this other work that I've done, and I'm sure, you know, George Lucas would let me show a few Star Wars drawings. So they said yes, and that was this book, Shadowline. But it was a trick because I just wanted to write my own stories too. I've been doing that as long as I've drawn. I just haven't shared a lot of them. In fact, none of them. So I said to them, this art book of mine, it can have words in there too, right? And they went, oh, yes, you write about your career and what you've done. I went, well, do you mind if I write something else? And they weren't listening, so they went, yes, 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 that's fine. So what I wanted to write about was this fiction story. The author of Shadowline doesn't exist. It's a character I made up to come and interview me, because it's important to me that creating art isn't seen just from the outside, right? That you don't just see the, oh, I can't do it, the big easel and the paintbrush and the furrowed brows. Instead, you go in the head, where we literally go to a different land. And in that land, there's all these ravenous deadlines coming up, ready to fight. And the muses fly overhead, and you hope they help every once in a while. But you, meanwhile, have to turn into this, a monster who's fit to fight on this epic battlefield. And, you know, I'm deep into this world, wrestling inside with these ideas and imagination. It's just like dreaming. When all of a sudden I'll hear lunch from downstairs, and I'll stagger downstairs to my family, who have to put up with the monster turning back into a human being. So I wanted to tell that story. Here's my made-up interviewer that wrote the book. And he writes to me and he asks, can I come and interview you? And I say, yes, but you have to come to another land, an invisible imaginary land, on the back of a unicorn, a centaur, Reen. So he does, there he is. And he meets me at the front door, but he doesn't know it's me yet. He thinks it's just this horrible monster. That is a deadline on the stairs. Do not worry, it is a deadline. And the one that opens the door is this little pygmy tyrannosaur with a really bad attitude. That's my inner critic. His name is Byron. And of course, he just wants to know, oh, you want to know about Iain the Caig? All right, but I'm going to tell you the true story. And then he says terrible things about me, but he's always followed by that little floating thing behind him. That's my hand. That's the real brain of the unit here. That's the one that does all the work, draws all the pictures for me. And there I am battling deadlines again. The interviewer falls through the different rooms of my house, or travels through the different rooms. Here he's accidentally ended up in the catacombs, where he meets my worst nightmare, clowns. I love clowns, but I'm scared of them because they paint the smiles on their faces. And then he sneaks up into the room of my future, my once and future projects. So here's a quick, very fast look at a Frankenstein book that I'm working on. And I can't even tell you what this one is, but there's a one-winged angel on a tightrope, blind. This is a series called Shadowline. It's about the mythological creatures that never went away. They just evolved and somehow got polluted. I have a story about Edgar Allan Poe and the little round balls you hang on Christmas trees. I have, oh, yes, and then I have a story about this guy I made up. He eventually meets me. He gets out of the room of future stories and ends up in the classroom. And whoom, I come in and whoom, teaching stories, practically wearing the same shirt. By the way, I don't always wear black, just so you know.
I was actually thinking about that.
Well, no, I wear black because you get smudges on your fingers. And if you wear white, you get them all over the place. Black. So he meets me. I teach him how to draw because he's come with a secret, right? And the book actually has the classes, by the way. This is the class on anatomy. There are little booklets in the book. This is a professional class on storyboarding. And he, I won't show you that yet. He learns how to draw, which kind of upsets his plans because he really took the job to come and convince me to illustrate his great American graphic novel. Because he wrote it, but he can't draw. He thinks he can't learn to draw, so I teach him. And now he doesn't need me anymore. So he kills me. I die in my own book. But then he has to bring me back to life. And it costs him a lot. And I won't tell you how he does it, but this is what he looks like by the end of it. He has to become a superhero himself and accept that we're all created. Who cares if you met your creator and at least he gave you drawing lessons? Anyway, my book came out. I think the publisher read it after it came out and went, what did you write? Too late. So it did well. It got some media coverage and sold well for its first printing. I forgot to check and see if the word Shadowline existed already. And yes, it's a lingerie company. But no problem. We'll do some product placement in the next book. Anyway, I've gone on, and these are my once and future icons. There's things that were in Shadowline, but most of these aren't. So these will be appearing in Shadowline 2, called Shadowlines. And we can talk about when that might happen once I relinquish the screen.
Yay!
Yay,
Oh, bravo. Bravo.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Well,
Yeah.
there's so much to tackle here, but I'd like to start at the very beginning and ask Iain. I'm going to start with you. How did you become interested in this world? Why did you decide that this was your way? You mentioned being in London, in UK at least, and again, I go back to the title. What universes inspired you, or still do, when it comes to creating your art?
We're going back to it because I've been drawing and writing since I was in the crib practically, right? Same with the gentleman down below whose head is nodding. Yes. We just always did this because not doing it was worse. Right? Right, Armand? There's a pain,
Absolutely. Yeah.
pain in doing it. But there's a greater pain in not doing it. And it's a pleasurable pain when you do it, actually. Because you're literally diving into the deep end of a pool of unknown creatures and things and stories. And you have no guarantee you'll come up with anything for dinner that night or a new friend. You may not come up at all.
You know, Kiara, Iain said something early on about everyone having this in them, having this storyteller, having this ability to convey this in your things from your heart and your imagination. And, you know, he's absolutely right. And the thing I'd add to that is there's probably one thing that separates people like us who are actually making these things and sharing them with the world and people who don't. And that is that when we were kids, no one told us no. I mean, no one said, stop your imagination right here from going on. And so you didn't, and you just kept it going. And then you let it flow out of your head into your hand and onto the paper. And you were a kid, and it was like, okay, I'm allowed to do anything I want because I'm fearless and I'm young and I've got all these ideas. And for some reason or another, that part of us didn't grow up. We let that little kid.
Fearless and young.
Yeah, and somehow or another, we were lucky enough through hard work and just dogged, just obsession, finding a way to become professional kids. And that's the coolest thing. And the thing is, it's in everybody. You just gotta sort of see that next step and going, you know what? I'm gonna be that kid, and I'm going to let it out. I'm gonna let the story out. I'm gonna let the monster out, as Iain said.
Yeah. And if I can butt in, you said something there that I just want you to record on my answering machine. And that is, Iain is absolutely right. I don't hear that very often because Iain is not absolutely right. Iain's not often right either. But that's part of the fun. Part of the fun is to be wrong and be wrong as often as you want. Mistakes are totally fine because that's where the gold is. Right? If the world changed a little bit, you would be right. So what do you do to change the world so you are right? Yeah. And as long as you're not driving a car, it's not dangerous.
True enough. Well, Iain, you have already taught me a couple of things with your slideshow now. Because first of all, it must have been very liberating to be able to work at Shadowline. The critics, the hand, and everything else, you know, that you could take from your own experience. And second, I would say the lesson is that take your publisher by surprise. Yes. Make sure Good. Which I suppose might help Armand as well.
Well, you know what, Chiara, by the way, Shadowline is fantastic in English. However, it would be just as fantastic, if not more so fantastic, in other languages, perhaps even in Italian.
Italian, yes.
Why?
I'm glad we agree on that.
We hope. Shadowline has been out of print for a number of years now, not because it didn't sell, but because the publisher has been very busy. And we've tried a number of times to get things started. It looked like last year we were on track. So I announced that Shadowlines was coming out, and the new version of Shadowline, the reprint, the expanded reprint, was coming out this year, this fall. And then a pandemic hit, and they had nothing to do with that. So let them off the hook. We're going to try again next year.
Fingers crossed. I look forward to that, honestly. And Armand, talking about books, there is I don't have a copy of Shadowline, forgive me, Iain, but I do have a copy of the Italian, and I'm sorry for, I suppose it's the other way around, but of Timeless. Lots of work and lots of time went into this one.
Oh,
yeah,
thank you.
What can you tell me about it? Because it's a beauty to
well, you know, it's
and read.
It was Timeless was a labor of love. When I was a little kid, I used to write little stories, and I remember the first novel I ever wrote. I think I was in 7th or 8th grade, and I wanted to write a horror story because I was enamored with Stephen King books at the time. I mean, when I was in junior high, I was reading a couple of things over and over. I was reading Dune by Frank Herbert over and over and over. I was reading Lord of the Rings, and I was reading anything written by Stephen King that had to be any remotely scary because my parents said, don't read Stephen King. And so it'll scare you. The moment they said, don't read it, it's forbidden, I had to read it. And so I started to write. And oh my gosh, one thing I realized was my first few stories were really bad. They're not so good, but they were so much fun, and I loved doing it. And so I continued to write, and I got a little bit better. I even won a few awards in school, and I put it aside. And then when I decided I wanted to write a story again, actually, no, let me back up. I was scared to write a story again because I hadn't done it in a long time. And I kept telling my son I would, write a little story for him. And I didn't get around to doing it. And he called me on it, and he said, Dad, when are you going to write a story for me? And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do that. And so I set out to make a little children's book, a small, little, tiny children's book. And I sat down with the pen and paper, started writing. And what came out of me was the ghost of Frank Herbert. And I ended up with like a 1,200-page story, epic adventure about this little boy trying to rescue his dad. And it was, it was funny because it was that moment that my son asked me to connect with him that I connected with the kid in me. And I ended up writing this big fat book, which we then trimmed down to be reasonable in Timeless. And because, like Iain, I always drew and painted, and I worked at it professionally, I thought I can't just have my words. I need to share my art. And so the book is as big as it is because I found a publisher who said, we like your artwork too. So if you want to make a story with art and words, have at it. And that's essentially, in a nutshell, why it ended up being what it is.
Yeah.
If you were to describe yourself, would you call yourself more of an artist, a writer, or it doesn't cut that way? It has to be a storyteller overall.
With the lips there, why I'm you're not moving your lips. Why I'm a storyteller, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you tell the stories.
Yeah.
Stand on the street corner and tell it to everyone coming by from an apple crate, it wouldn't matter. It's just all about telling stories.
Armand, you mentioned being inspired very close to home and to your heart by your son and being inspired by you, I suppose.
Right.
Other art heroes, stories authors that you like to mention that have been inspirational to you?
Yeah, actually,
we have time.
We've got I'm gonna narrow it down really, really small. And the thing is that and both of them are within my immediate circle. I mean, literally within my immediate circle. The first being my son. And one of the things that is interesting is that when you're an artist and then you have a child, yeah, a lot of people assume, oh, they're going to be an artist just like you. And that ended up happening for me and my son, but not in the way that I expected. In fact, he does draw, he does paint fairly well, but he writes music and he performs musically. He's a musician. And like Iain said, you find your way to create your art and your stories, and he's found his, and it's wonderful. And the other thing is kind of a general nod, but more specifically, like to my friend who I'm here with today, is that I've been so fortunate to meet so many different people that tell their stories in their own unique way, that have had profound influence on, what you do. And I remember when I tried to write my first big illustrated novel, I was holding a Art of Star Wars book, and it had of the prequels, and it had Ian McCaig's drawings of Padme and Darth Maul in it, and I was on fire again. I was on fire again because I had forgotten what it was like to be excited like a little kid, seeing something that was coming out that was so pure. And I did not know then that I would be meeting Ian McCaig, sharing car rides with him, spilling coffee as I tried to drive to work every day. But, life is funny that way. You sort of meet these amazingly creative people who do things differently. And I think, I don't know if I'm going off point of the question, but I just want to say I'm so blessed to have been able to experience a young musician like the one in my family, wise, inspiring storyteller like Ian McCaig, and the countless other people that I've met.
You're too kind, my friend. May I interrupt? I've never recorded an interview or a podcast at all at this time of day. And I did not know that the light came beaming in, hits my white desk, and pushes up into my face and makes it look like I'm a jack-o'-lantern lit up from the inside. My daughter, Mishi, I have a son and a daughter. My daughter is an artist in the same profession as me, and she is watching right now. And she often says that, when I try to tell her that I write horror stories too, I'm actually quite a dark person inside. She goes, yes, dark as a light bulb. Well, Mishi, now I look like a light bulb. Just for you.
See, you needed Lucca to record that time in the morning or whatever it is where you are now. But yeah, I'd like to ask you the same thing, Iain. Who inspires you and which authors or names? Aha. Oh, I love him. Ray Bradbury. Yeah.
Yeah, most of my heroes as an artist, even as a storyteller and an artist, are authors. I read Ray Bradbury's books voraciously as a kid, and my head started to balloon out with ideas and images, and I had to draw them down or it would have exploded. So most of what I know about art and storytelling came from the inspiration from mostly Ray Bradbury when I was young, and then Ursula Le Guin and Margaret Atwood and Frank Herbert and Tolkien. And you may notice there's a few books in my room. And this is my A studio. This is the traditional studio. So it's a sacred space. And that shelf there is right above the drawing board there. And so those books are my constant inspiration. You'll notice there's a brontosaurus there somewhere. So that's the first thing I ever drew. There's an otter up here. That's an otter skull up there somewhere. That's the third thing I ever drew. No, actually it's the fourth. The second thing I ever drew was Frankenstein's monster, who we met here. And the third thing I ever drew passed away today, and I wept. Sean Connery died this morning at 90 years old. And he died peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by his family from what I've read. So there's nothing to be sad about. Stories need endings. I don't mind that my story has an ending because I want to make the pages count. Every page is a gift. It's so important. I want a big fat novel like Timeless. And yet, at the end of the news that said Sean Connery has passed away, they played a little clip from one of his movies, The Man Who Would Be King. And they ended with him on the bridge that they're hacking down, they're cutting down, and then he will fall to his death. And he sings, "The minstrel boy to the war did go." And I go, boom, tears pouring out of my eye. So you become passionately fond of the things that you grew up with. And if you process them by drawing them or writing them or watching them, you love them as much as you love family, right?
Yeah.
They're really important.
And they stay with you. You keep them with you as you go. As you go through life. It's true.
Yeah.
And even if
Sean Connery's head down in my lower studio, when he was doing the Indiana Jones film where he plays Indiana Jones's father, he had gone off to another film and shaved off his mustache. And he needed to come back for some reshoots. We had to put a false mustache on him for the shoot. So we cast his face so we could sculpt exactly the right mustache. And somehow I got a copy of that face cast, which sits down next to my own head from the same time period back when I was in my 30s.
oh wow.
So yes, literally, I keep my childhood heroes in a cupboard downstairs.
Well, one of the things I'm glad you mentioned your childhood heroes, and yeah, stories, and but they keep making themselves known to new audience, I would say, to new people coming in, And one reason I mentioned that is that Armand, and we didn't agree on that beforehand, but Armand mentioned a book about the first trilogy of the prequel, the Star Wars prequel. So this is the first edition from September 99, and it was my second trip to London, and it was before Amazon and e-commerce, and I just had one suitcase, so, and that, a finite amount of money. So I knew I had to be choosy and to choose what I wanted to bring home with me. This came home with me. And I remember copying your work. And I find it so elating that we are able to chat about that now. Because in different ways, I get back to what you said earlier about being able at least to be storytellers, if not all being storytellers. Because I'm a translator and editor, I work in festivals like this one. I get the great pleasure to meet people like you. And I meet other people who aspire to be whatever they want to be in life, which if that's a concept designer or illustrator or journalist or writer, or to work behind the scenes in these fields. But each of them has their own stories and heroes they relate to. And as you said, childhood stories, childhood heroes that they bring them with themselves. As they grow on in life. So I just wanted to mention that because it's been lovely to be able to share this.
That means a lot to me. It really does. I don't pay much attention to awards, but hearing that from a human being means more than an Oscar to me. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're one of those people too, right? It's really important to know, honestly, audience, are you listening? This is really important. Don't put your heroes on pedestals. Put them on bookshelves. Put them on the wall. But don't put them up there and yourself down here, because that's just an excuse not to do it yourself.
No, but you have to try yourself. It's true.
Try. There is no try.
We mentioned your own work and your own creations up until now, but you've also worked in a more cooperative fields as cinema, being concept artists in art departments. I'd like to ask both of you, how does it feel? What does it mean, actually? It's a different question. What does it mean to be a concept artist? And what is it like to work as one piece of a bigger mechanism? You have to bring your own creativity and your originality, but at the same time, you're serving something bigger than your own storytelling ideas, I suppose. Or at least I think so. So
Armand, is it hair scars. We do the Jaws scene.
Yeah, I suppose we could do that. Most of mine usually it's falling out of my head, and of course this too. This used to be jet black.
Stop.
Well, okay, sorry about that.
Showing off.
It's an amazing, it's an amazing thing to be a part of a group of people that are telling a story together. And the thing is that it's difficult to make a movie that requires 300 people. It's difficult to be, doing every single thing. And it's fantastic when you get to work with so many talented people that bring what they bring to the table. The first job I ever worked on as a kid or coming out of school was Prince of Egypt. And I mention this only because it was the only project I got to, and unlike Iain, who's probably worked with him a bunch, it was the only project I got to work on with Steven Spielberg. And it was my first project. And the thing is what this goes back a little bit to what Iain said. He drove to work on Prince of Egypt in a station wagon, because he was dropping off his kids at school. And he wore a t-shirt and a pair of jeans and a baseball cap. And he came into the meetings and he would talk to you. He would draw on your pad of paper. It's like, oh, maybe more like this, or put the camera over there, or blah, blah, blah. Or he was a person. He was just a regular person who was, when he would speak about his artistry, he'd speak about his story, just like you, in that he was a kid. He was like a kid who was talking about what he was passionate about. And it's like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if he came through the door and then this happened? And then he might change his mind and go, oh, wait a minute, but we could see it from this angle. Oh, and then you can see this, and that'd be great. And he's talking to himself, and he's talking to you. And he's not like, I'm the director. I'm Steven Spielberg. I've won an award. You are beneath me. He was basically in love with this thing he was doing. And then he would do the coolest thing ever. He would turn and you go, what do you think?
Yeah,
and you'd be like, oh, you want to know what I think? And goes, well, I didn't literally say that, but I was thinking that, because I remember the first time he ever said that to me, I was like, I was tongue tied, and he laughed and he goes, I don't know, what do you think? And I said, well, I think that's pretty cool, but it'd be cool if this was bigger. He was talking about something I was doing, and I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, thanks. That's what it was like. And then at the end of the day, I did my little part. I did my little drawing. I did my little painting, and I got to help him with what he was trying to say. And it was the coolest thing ever. It was a great experience. And I learned so much from that. And when I work alongside guys like Iain, here's me, the artist, and the level of what I thought I was and the kind of person I thought I could be. And then I got to spend time drawing and painting and hanging out. And not only did I become a better artist, I got to become a better person from the experience of it. And that's what it was like at times working collaboratively on films. Now, I'm going to spend only just a little teeny bit on, sometimes it's very challenging. Sometimes there's a lot of personalities when you're working with a group of people. And sometimes it's tough. And sometimes those are, in my experience list, I'm going to chalk up as, or file down as, I learned something. It's like, I hope I don't have to go through that again. And so I've got a lot of those too. And when you work in films, you work collaboratively, you get the good with the bad. But at the end of the day, you're still alive. You're still drawing and painting and maybe working with others or your own. It's pretty awesome. So
a worst day in the film industry doing what we do is like Club Med. It really is. But just to add to that, I have this joy of seeing creativity, and I don't actually care who's holding the pencil at the time. Seriously. As it seems the same creative force beaming out. And if we can just get out of the way of it, and we can't, right? Because we're who we are. So we're going to influence it somehow. We're going to make our little mirror reflecting it show just a portion. And yet it's still the same light we're reflecting. It's still the same thing. So I take great pleasure out of anybody winning an Academy Award, out of any great book that moves and inspires. The thing that dampens it in collaborative or even in personal work is when you try to take control and guarantee it's going to work. Well, there's no guarantees. This is the entertainment industry. You don't have to clap, right? You just get up on stage and do your best and enjoy whatever the audience gives you. And because of that, it keeps it alive and fresh. And what I've discovered is that the audience will clap as long as you don't lie to them. The moment you don't tell them your truth, something you've experienced, something you believe, and instead you go, oh, what did Armand do on page 12? Because that was a good setup. And then I copy it because it was so good. But I'm only copying it. I'm only doing the shell. The light from inside is gone because I'm not this guy down there with that magnificent beard he keeps dismissing. See, I'm me without the beard, and I have to tell people what it's like to not have a beard. And then they get my truth. They get my vision of what things are like. I know you don't have a beard either. We can lament together after the show. But it really is, no, to even know what it's like to be a woman, I would die to jump inside a woman's head and really experience that. I am so jealous that you have babies. So jealous. What does that feel like? I'm sure it's not all, sugar and spice, but still, I want to know what that, so the only way we can do that is to make stuff, right? For you to tell me. And I write stories that actually have women in them. And I have to try and guess what it's like inside your head. And yet I find we have so many shared experiences. We share the human experiences, not the same for everybody. But I have a side inside of me that I guess on that graph of man and woman would be considered more woman, and I can tap into that. And out comes Padme. I actually, if I may interrupt with an anecdote, and forgive me, George, for telling this times, but I love drawing strong women. I love drawing any women, just because there's such a curiosity to me always, because I'm not a woman, and I have to use my imagination every time I draw one. Same with men that I don't know either, but I love to do it. And I guess the audience responds because a lot of people say, wow, you draw beautiful women. I was like, well, yes, but they're beautiful because you're inside. So I'm drawing a Padme on my drawing board in the 3rd floor art department of Skywalker Ranch late at night. And the 3rd floor art department is right above George Lucas's private office. And there is a secret staircase that goes behind the library up past his office into the art department. And only George uses that staircase. So if we hear footsteps, we know it's George. So I'm working late at night, and what? Footsteps at 11 o'clock at night? This is crazy. It can't be George. It must be an intruder. But I'm deep into the drawing of Padme. I am Padme. And the door opens and in comes George. And it was a late night visit from George Lucas that never happens. And he's looking around a little bit, and I just get lost in my drawing again. And before I know it, he's been standing beside my drawing board, watching me draw Padme for who knows how long. And I look up as he reaches down and rips the page off the board, and he says, the question is, Iain, who is she? Who is she? Because I think he had fallen in love with the woman that I drew. And when you're deep in art land, deep in the Shadowline, you always tell the truth. You have to tell the truth. So I just looked at him and said, well, she's me, George. And I saw this look of horror on his face as he started to back away. And I said, no, they're all me, George. Darth Maul, Queen Amidala. And the last words he said before he fled back down the secret staircase was, you need help.
What a lovely memento from the time of your life.
You draw from the inside out is the point of the story. You don't.
I think I understand that. Iain, you're a teacher as well. Does the learning process ever stop? And what is it like to teach, please? Because I think you must be a hoot as a teacher.
Oh, thank you. Well, this shy young man down here is an amazing teacher. Tell me, you were the life drawing instructor at Art Center, one of the most prestigious art schools there is.
Yeah, I was able to do that. And I was, I got to teach some of that. I got to teach some figure painting. I got to teach visual development for people, and it's a fantastic thing. It's kind of like what you say, Iain. It's a way. There's nothing more gratifying than actually helping to empower somebody see what they have in them, what the beauty and the artistry and the talent and the ability and the things that they have that they want to share with the world that they didn't know they were capable of. And I think that above all else, teaching does that. Teaching is fulfills in that way, you know.
That magic moment when they realize they actually have superpowers.
Yeah.
And it lights up like this because they realize, oh, I can paint, I can draw. What? That's worth it. That's payment for what we do. You know, teaching is one of the most well-paid professions generally, and it should be. It should be. Yeah. I hope that's one of the good things that comes out of the pandemic. We start to value a lot of the jobs that are on the lower rungs of the pay scale and realize these are the shapers and the makers. These are the storytellers and creators of human beings. And we treasure them.
You mentioned the sorry, Armand, please go ahead.
You guys sort of inspired me. I want to share one little tiny story about teachers. I was, when I was a student at Art Center, there was this wonderful teacher. He was one of my favorite teachers, and he ended up becoming a very good friend of mine. His name was Steve Houston, and he was teaching me figure drawing. And I would follow him around the hallways like a lost puppy dog. I mean, and ask him questions like, Steve, why didn't my drawing come out? That last one I did, you know, the one, like he would remember after 40 students, he's critiquing their drawings. And I go, I couldn't get it right. I tried to get this right. I couldn't get this part right. How do I get this right? How do I get this right? And then the next day would come and I'd be tugging on his shirt sleeve and being, how do I get better? How do I get this right? And he looked at me one day and he said, let go of my shirt. And then after he said that, he said, look, Armand, here's the thing. You know, you're going to spend the rest of your life trying to be a better artist. You never really arrive at ever being satisfied. Like, I've reached it. There's nothing to reach there. You're going to continually learn. He goes, don't make the mistake of forgetting that what's more important is using your art to have something to say. And I didn't know what he meant at the time because I was a snot-nosed kid going, well, I just want to be awesome, man. Come on, help me be awesome. And he kept trying to tell me, it's like, you got to use your art towards something that's meaningful. You have to have something to say. I mean, teaching is kind of like that. What Iain and I do, or have been blessed to be able to do as a pursuit, is that, you know, it's like you realize, hey, you know what I have to say, what I have to contribute, what I can do to better the world or better my fellow man is worth it. And if these are the tools I have to do it, then I'm going to use these tools to do it, you know.
Did you really sound like that when you were a kid?
Yeah.
I don't think so. If I was casting and directing your younger self, I would never have guessed that. No. And I know Steve Houston, and he would have said, let go of my shirt.
Yeah, and you would, because he's kind of a big, imposing guy if he wanted to be.
He draws boxers, and I think he knows a lot about that himself. Right. You would like to survive that one.
Iain, you mentioned the pandemic earlier on, and there is one question from the audience that will actually cover what I wanted to ask you too, which is in this it's a strange time, this very weird year. Do you find that your creativity has helped you or has helped others that, you know, around you that you work with, or has it been difficult to do what you do this year?
I've been very lucky.
Both of you, actually.
Yeah, I've been very, very lucky. Victoria is kind of like New Zealand. So Victoria, which is on our island,
yeah,
which has got, you know, 16 cases of COVID, and that's a spike for us. There was quite a while where we had just a handful less, and they never shut anything down nature-wise. I could always go to the beaches. I could always walk through the woods. And the rest of the time I'm usually in here anyway. And also we don't eat out that much because my wife and son make better food than any restaurant. So I kind of like staying here, and I make good pies, so, you know, and I wash the dishes with joy, but that's another story. So the hard part of the pandemic for me is the fact that a lot of the people I love, and that includes most of humanity, is on the other side of the window. And I have to stand there, and it's like some sort of demonic toy store inside, and people are getting hurt, people are dying, people who are not used to being alone are suddenly confronted with themselves and any inner critics and any inner demons. I got mine under control because I know what he looks like, and I put him in a book, and now he's afraid of me. But for a lot of people, your inner demons can destroy you if you let them. And sometimes, even if you don't let them, they get in there anyway, and you need help. So the hardest part of the pandemic for me is sitting watching all that through the window. And my heart is going out to everybody who's really, really struggling with that right now. Having said that, we talk so much in the media about what's wrong with the world, what's wrong with this human machine, this society, and this world that we have, and the world we live in that we're rapidly destroying. Forgetting to mention that there's lots of people who are trying not to destroy it. You know, there's everything from the Greta Thunbergs to the ordinary people who remember to switch off their extra lights. And what I've seen is when the machine works well, when we work well, we can do miracles. And I think we have forgotten that about ourselves. And we are in need of a tune-up and maybe a few extra parts to replace the ones that are broken. And we can do that. We can fix it because we put a man on the moon, because we've cured so many diseases, because we have names for invisible things that allow us to communicate like this. Look at this. Human beings did this. We can abuse it and misuse it by getting mad at each other and shouting and misbehaving because we've forgotten that part of social behavior has broken. But it will be repaired. We will replace it because we were able to make this, because we can talk to each other, because there's enough of the miracle left in humanity to fix anything if we choose. So remember that, right? Remember that as you're all by yourself, that you're not by yourself. And I think, as I said earlier, the very best way to teach is to live it, right? Embody the person you want to have in this world. Not just for your leaders, but for your neighbors, for your partner. Embody the kind of person you want to be and share that with people so they can see what it is. It's a lifelong profession. But you know, the alternative is worse. It's exactly like drawing.
Thank you.
Sometimes it's really hard and there is pain. Not doing it is worse.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the thing is, it is hard. It is difficult. It's like Iain and like so many others, it's difficult to be a parent and see the world that your child is experiencing, right? Like my son is a junior in high school, and I worry about, he wants to participate in sports, when he'll be able to play music in front of his friends again. Will he have a normal high school graduation? So many kids this year didn't. And so the thing is, there's all these things that can make you sad and make you depressed. And sure, we all sort of fight those. I mean, I do. I'm honest. It's a human being. This is not a normal human experience, but humans have gone through experiences that are challenging and tough and horrible. And like Iain, I think that I sort of turn to, in times like this, the best within us, the best of what we can be. And you know what? That's the harder thing to do, but it is the thing that is right, and it's the thing that makes you good and makes you decent, is seeing the best in people, because it's that part of us that's going to transcend these terrible times. It was that part in us. Like, I know when I hear stories from my grandparents during World War II, when their city was being bombed by the Japanese in the Philippines, they had to turn to this part of themselves, and they knew that life would go on and they would be able to build. And so they were able to do it. They taught me to be a strong person. I'm going to try and do it. I'm going to try and teach that to my kids. And so I think, for as tough as we're all having it, first off, you acknowledge it, that it is, and that you be there for each other, be there for your family, and try to feed the best that's in you, and actively try to feed the best in what's in others, and that'll be a positive force in shaping what's to come next. And yeah.
You know, when we get advice from people, a lot of it is positive, but then afterwards, after the show, people will go, wait, what did they suggest? And you try to remember, well, I have to be the best I am. How do I do that? And then you're lost in the minutia. So, as a gift from Armand and I today, we are going to give you a tangible thing you can do today to be that person, to make the world just a little bit better place. Are you ready?
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Today, go and do something kind, wonderful, thoughtful for someone else. Doesn't matter who. And don't tell anybody about it. Do it for the sake of doing it. That's one step to being the best that's in humanity. Ta-da!
Yeah.
Guys, it's a fantastic line to end this event on. I'm just sorry we have to close it, because I will stay with you for another hour to keep you, just because I find you inspiring. And
You would stay.
no, but I realize you have people to go back to and things to do. But truly, it's been inspiring, and it's been uplifting, and such a relief as well, because as you both mentioned, we hear a lot about what doesn't work as of now within ourselves and in the world at large, but we don't talk enough about everything you mentioned, the miracle that it's in people, and the fact that we can feed the best of us, the best of what's in us, and if we keep feeding it, we'll see the difference. We'll bring that difference out into the world, and it will be a positive circle, not a bad one, that will start, and we'll be part of it. And I don't want to speak too much, because we sadly do have to close, but I want to thank you again, because both of you here tonight and in your work at large as storytellers, put that in practice, I think. So thank you very much.
Grazie mille.
Grazie, e grazie a Lucca per averci ospitato. È stato veramente un privilegio. Grazie a tutti quelli che ci hanno ascoltato. Thank you both, truly.
Until next time. See you then.
Until next time. I hope to see you. Thank you, Lucca.